So, Marion, I am so excited to record this podcast with you because it's been a while since we properly talked.
It has. Oh my gosh. I have been counting down the days for this one. It's always you're always a good laugh. So
I know we had to cancel it because of like Christmas and illness and
oh
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why I'm asking you this because I know, but my listeners don't. But did you ever feel the need to be a good girl when you were growing up?
Every goddamn day. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. So grew up in the west of Scotland, just outside Glasgow, and only child. Um, the daughter of two disabled parents, low income family, grew up in council estate, when I explain to my friends here in the US, I'm like, it's like the project. And they always look horrified.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. 1980s, west of Scotland, very industrial. Shipbuilding was dying, heavy engineering was dying, a lot of, unemployment, a lot of social issues. At that time, Glasgow was the murder capital of Europe, which was nice. And also the knife capital of Europe, coincidentally. So quite an interesting place to grow up. Um, I was parented by a child. I
Mm.
was a carer from a really young age. I carried a lot of, I guess, anxiety, worrying about my parents when I shouldn't have been probably. But and so that that notion of feeling like I had to be successful, I had to um, do better, go further, work harder, I think developed from a really young age.
Mm.
And yeah, and I think that whilst has been highly beneficial because it's got me to where I am today, but hasn't come without sustained damage.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, I have had a very strong sense of always having to be a good girl. Um, I don't know if that ever really goes away, even though we try hard to push against it.
Well, I think I think we can dampen it down a little bit or know when we're doing it. So being a
Mm.
strategic good girl, you know, especially at work, can get us to where we need to be as well. You know, so it's that kind of awareness that it is a thing that we have
Yeah,
been raised to be, and you can choose to rebel against it, but you also can choose to strategically use it to your advantage.
I think that's exactly it. And I think that's as you get older and have more life experiences and pay for a shitload of therapy like I did,
Hmm.
you can kind of see the difference. And you're right, I think a lot of those um, feelings and thoughts and ideas that we form when we're young about conforming and about being good, uh, they can bode well in certain moments as we become older and we're in the workplace and we're trying to get things done. But also, honestly, most of the time I don't give a fuck anymore. Yeah, I we always laugh about this, in my profession of HR. I'm the least HR person that you would expect to find leading a people team
Hmm.
because I don't conform. I push against most things. I think a lot of it's bullshit. I think there's a lot of practitioners in our space that learned by osmosis,
Mm.
which doesn't bode well for it's like Chinese whispers, right? When you were a kid, start off with one thing and end up with something else.
Mm.
Um, and I'm very rebellious against that. Also, let's face it, most people teams are predominantly women, and we have to use our skills to get people to listen. And that's not by shouting, and that's not by stamping our feet, and that's not by um, trying to be the loudest in the room, but it's being the smartest, and it's being the data driven one, and it's being the cool head, and it's being the one that um, manages to not say, I told you so, but that you're like,
You can say that in a very business-like way.
oh yeah, completely, completely. Um, but it takes time to figure that out. And again, I think
Mm,
that conditioning from a young age of must work harder, must be better, must break out of this, low income, high poverty, high social issues space that I've grown up in. Um, the formation of the notion of having to break out of that from such a young age, I think
mm,
that's what stays with you, and that's the thing that can be a little bit harder. Like one thing I've noticed as I've gotten older, as an example, growing up, food insecure, um, I can never let my cupboard or my freezer go run low because it brings up a huge amount of anxiety for me
mm.
because of how things were when I was a kid. So I think I recognize it and I've made peace with it, but it's still there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure that that ever really goes. It's a safety mechanism a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah, but
Mm.
as safety mechanisms go, that one is a fairly harmless one.
Oh yeah,
So
completely, completely.
it's not like reaching for reaching for a bottle of vodka and a chocolate cake, is it? It's
Or yeah, or going back to my train spotting esque environment growing up, not reaching for a big old syringe of heroin either. So,
yes. So it's,
but that is the environment I grew up in, not in the house obviously, but thankfully, but certainly in the locality,
mm,
the explosion of heroin in the west of Scotland in the 80s was insane, and
mm,
um, so I can remember thinking maybe my early 20s thinking my life could have taken a very different path. I could have succumbed to any of those pressures as a kid. I could have
mhm,
very easily gone down that path, got involved with, you know, um, less desirable friends, my mum would say.
mhm.
Um, and but I didn't. There's something always inside me driving me forward, saying, work harder, work smarter, be a good girl, study, get into university, which I did. And that makes me sound like a saint, but I wasn't because I was also a party girl and I was a bit of a wild child. I think that was my way of coping with what was happening around me. That was my rebellion, but it wasn't so far gone that it was detrimental to me kind of pushing myself forward. So I don't know.
It was a controlled rebellion.
It was, and I'm really thankful for that. I don't know how it was controlled, but somehow I always had this like real sense of knowing my limits
Hmm.
and party hard, but it never went beyond a irredeemable point. So
Yeah.
but it added a lot of color, added a lot of fun to my life. Um, and it was much needed. I mean, around that time, my dad was diagnosed with dementia when I was 16. He'd been ill my entire life, and that was a really hard thing to wrap my head around. And in my 20s, had to make decisions about his care, and he went into care when I was 23, and I really struggled with that. I felt like I'd let him down. Again, there's that good girl thing. I
Hmm.
should be able to take care of my dad,
Yeah. Hmm.
but I couldn't because I was 23. I could barely take care of myself. I'd
Yep.
finished university. I was, in full-time work. It was, yeah, that's the stuff that I think really does a lot of lasting damage. Because again, our thoughts, our conditioning must
Hmm.
be a good girl, must be able to take care of my dad, must be able to make sure that he's okay. He comes first, and I did put him first, which, you know, in hindsight, I wouldn't change it. He was the love of my life, but yeah, it definitely didn't come without a lot of sustained damage.
Yeah. Because at 23, you're still a child, let's face it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you made that mature decision to ask for help. You didn't you didn't martyr yourself. You didn't
Mm-hmm.
put your dad's needs before your own,
Mm.
but you kind of did as well because the psychological impact of that sort of feeling that you might have abandoned him a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's such a mature decision to make at such a young age, and
Yeah.
sad that you had
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it really came around because my mum wasn't able to look after him
Yeah.
anymore. And she said, I need to put your dad into care. And I was like, absolutely not. No way. I'm gonna give up work. I'm gonna like take care of him. Not nothing. And then I realized, like, yeah, that. How does that work?
Yeah.
And there again, there's that sense of failure. I am very capable, therefore I should be able to do this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there probably was a certain an element of martyrdom in there. Uh, you know, for the longest time, my life revolved around get up, go to work, leave work, go to the nursing home, make sure my dad was okay, sit with him, get him tucked into bed, go to the bus stop, sob all the way home, get home, eat something, rinse and repeat. And um, yeah, and that went on for a long time. My dad had lived a lot longer than I think most people thought he would. And he passed when I was 36. And a lot happened in that time. We had a lot of, particularly the last few years of his life, where I used to go to bed at night and I'd have clothes laying out beside the bed because always in the middle of the night I'd get a phone call. You need to come. We've called an ambulance. Meet your dad at the accident and emergency. And I would get there and I'd be standing outside waiting for the ambulance and thinking, is this it? Realise he's dead, like where are we at? Because he would have these urine infections and they would just get really nasty really quickly. And,
Yeah.
there was a couple of times where they didn't think he was going to survive. And, so there was a lot of that. And so it was just layer upon layer of trauma, really. But I didn't see it that way at the time. I just thought, this is what you do. You're a good girl. You're taking care of your dad. You're alleviating this pressure from your mum because psychologically my mum couldn't cope. Um, and I didn't have a partner and I wasn't putting my needs first and I wasn't taking care of my physical health or my mental health. I was just focused on this and trying to function. And all
Mm-hmm.
that time, I think I was suppressing my own needs. Um, I was in jobs that I was miserable in. I didn't want to be in the UK. I wanted to be in the US. I'd wanted to be in the US for a long, long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
But but I just didn't ever know how that was going to happen. And I didn't know, I didn't even know where I belonged in the world. I didn't know what I was meant to be doing. I didn't know what I, what I would be after my dad passed. I just everything just felt like so unclear and cloudy. And reflecting back, I was just in this big bubble of grief. The thing about dementia is that you grieve constantly. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like when someone dies and then you start the grieving process. You start to grieve immediately because that person that you knew is leaving you while they're still in that
Very,
body.
very slowly.
Hmm.
Or
I
very
was really,
quickly, then slowly, then quickly, then seems to
yeah,
recover. So it's
I,
roller coaster.
yeah, it really is. And I was really fortunate. My dad never forgot me, never forgot who I was. The second I'd walk in a room, he'd be like, "There's my baby." My dad's called Jack. Everybody loved Jack.
Mm.
And so I was really, really, really blessed. But I think one of the other things that was very difficult was some absolutely incredible people took care of my dad when I couldn't in the care home and when he was hospitalised. But let's face it, these resources are very under resourced. You've got a lot of care staff, nurses, doctors who are burnt out
Hmm.
and overwhelmed and not supported and
And underpaid.
underpaid, overworked.
Hmm.
And now, as someone is a developing expert in this area, no psychological safety. Can't
No,
speak up.
no.
But I didn't know what psychological safety at the time was.
Hmm.
Um, but I could see that I knew enough to know that when things went wrong with my dad's care, it wasn't because the people caring for him were malicious or didn't care or were bad practitioners. It wasn't that at all. It was that they were dying and
Hmm.
they weren't supported and they were, really, really in a bad spot. And I think that might have been one of the first times where I started to think, this isn't cool. This isn't
Mm.
right. Um, and then the last few years of my life, I realized I need to learn more. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I need to learn more. I went back to school and I got a master's in international HR management at Glasgow Caledonian.
Hmm.
And I was writing my thesis as my dad was dying. Actually, I wrote it beside his bed. And when he died on the Sunday, and on the Friday, I got my results to say that I passed with distinction, top of my class. Um, and that was a shit graduation because I didn't want to be there.
No.
But I went. Um, so that's when things started to really come together. I During that education, I learned about psychological safety and psychological contracts, and I thought, oh, this is interesting.
Hmm.
And I moved to the Middle East after that. I was like, if I don't get out of Scotland, my grief is going to kill me, so I have to get out. And I went to the Middle East, and I was there for like 4 or 5 years. And as an HR practitioner in the Middle East, that's a very interesting place to be because um, you are in an environment where the majority of people are expats,
Hmm.
and particularly the industry I was working in retail and as in HR, and you were working with a very high amount of uh, low people skills, right? Retail in F&B. So, and a lot of
Hmm.
these employees were from the Philippines, from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Eastern Europe, um, and some were working in really conditions that did not sit well.
No.
Um, and I dealt with a lot of situations while I was there that slowly started to to kill me again. I would see things like young ladies get themselves in the family way, but not married. And that's illegal, right? So if you get caught doing that, you're in a maternity jail, you deliver, you go to jail. I mean, stuff like that. Suicide is uh, not, should we say, legal under Sharia law. Someone tries to commit suicide and they don't succeed, then they also end up in jail or a mental institution and then jail. And so after a lot of time dealing with stuff like that, and again, must be good, must help, must support, must anticipate the needs of others before they know what they need themselves. Parentified child, carer. I was burnt out, and I'm like, why am I burnt out again? I'm not caring for my dad anymore. Why am I so burnt out? And I
You're
realized that
taking on everybody's needs and everybody's problems.
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. And how did I fill the hole of my dad dying? I filled it with, a bunch of employees and their needs and their, and I had a full breakdown. 2018, I had a full breakdown, and it was just years of compounded anxiety, depression, grief. Later diagnosed with complex PTSD, and I thought, with PTSD, I didn't go to war, you know,
You did
in the
though.
military. Yeah,
You
yeah,
did though.
yeah. And I see it now, and I see it, it took a fair amount of therapy to be able to recognize that and um, give myself the love that I needed that I didn't have as a kid. Not that my parents didn't love me, but they couldn't love me in the way that I needed to be loved, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I think there's a lot, I know I just spat a lot out, but there's a lot in there that tells me that my good girl conditioning saved my life probably,
Hmm.
but at the same time did a lot of damage. And I now try to use all of that as a force for good. And that a
Hmm.
lot of that is what underpins my research now in psychological safety and remote hybrid working, return to office. That's what my PhD research is in. Particularly, I have an interest for those that are caregivers
Hmm.
because inclusion in the workplace for caregivers is so important.
Yeah.
Had I had the type of support that I needed as a young caregiver, I might have fared better. But this is the early 2000s. People didn't know what this stuff
No.
was, you know. Amy Edmondson was probably tinkering about um, at Harvard,
Quietly
and
in the background.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, in a little bit later, she obviously our seminal paper about psychological safety. Um, and that's what I learned in school. But I didn't know any of that stuff then. So I think yes, it's it's boded well for me in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of damage. So it's definitely complex.
Yes, it is. And I think that's what it makes it so interesting as well,
Mm-hmm.
because it stopped you going down a path that you could have very easily, because the amount of stress and pressure that caring for parents as a like baby, pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
you could have very easily um reached for the syringe, as it were. Yeah. Like, I'm not laughing because I'm just laughing because Marion did the tapping on her arm thing you do before you shoot up. And I only did that because of the one time I watched Trainspotting. It's like, I think I need to be drunk to watch this. And I wasn't, so I was just like, I don't know what's going on. Put the subtitles on. Oh dear me. Right. So it saved you, but also the damage it does, because we grow up not knowing what we want, who we are,
Mm-hmm.
how we fit in, how we belong. And I think especially in the workplace. So I keep harping on about this. What happens to those good girls in school, university, colleges, who are more mature for their age, are better behaved, getting better results, coming top
Mm-hmm.
of the class like you did? What
Mm-hmm.
happens the second that they step into into an organization? They go from,
Yeah.
mature and achieving, to all of a sudden you've got like imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
you have confidence issues. And my two favorite ones that were leveled at me is like, I'm not strategic or commercial enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'm like a recruit manager. How strategic or commercial can I be in this
Yeah.
particular role? And
Yeah.
and it's just like, what happens? And it's like, obviously doesn't anything happens to us, we're still the same humans. It's the context. So the fact that the
Mm-hmm.
world of work was built for men like, I always say, like your man from Mary Poppins, George Banks, who literally his entire world revolved around traipse into work, doing
Mm-hmm.
doing his stuff. He had staff at home. He had, a wife at home to look after the children, and his entire contribution to parenting was tapping his children on the head and sending them off to bed.
Mm-hmm.
The world of work was made for George Banks and his
Yes,
friends. It was not
absolutely.
it was not made for Mrs. Banks.
Mm-mm. It wasn't made for Mrs. Banks. It's still not necessarily made for Mrs. Banks, but who it's definitely not made for are the chimney sweeps, or the should we say the female versions of Dick Van Dyke, but it's
Hmm.
not made for the middle classes now, for women, because we're getting screwed in every direction.
Yep.
You know, cost of living is out of control. No one can afford childcare at all. We're now shifting the goalposts on, uh, yes, you can work from home. Remote working is great. We know you're productive. We trust you to fuck that, get your ass in the office. And if your bum isn't in a seat for 8 hours, then you're not doing anything. And you only
No.
have to look at what's going on here in the US right now with
Yeah.
my favourite, my buddy Musk. She's dead
It's like,
sarcastically.
are you claiming him? I'm not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't even get in a Tesla, never mind think about buying one.
Yeah.
Um,
They
yeah,
keep setting fire to Teslas. They did it in France, and there's one happened in America. This like Tesla chargers in America's went up in flames. So
oh geez.
I know.
Yeah, and I just think, I was watching the president address Congress the other night, and he made this comment about, he was talking about tariffs, and he was talking about, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for a while, but no, it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be okay. And I'm like, of course it's not, because it's not you that's getting squeezed. It's everyone who's lower income, who's a caregiver, who has kids or parents or
Is
grandparents. Or,
disabled.
yeah, exactly, right? Um, and I get so angry because it's exactly that. It's the
Mm,
working classes. I hate that phrase, but it's the best way to describe that are being,
screwed.
yeah, completely. Like I was almost about to say tortured. I mean, that's a strong word, but I'm fortunate, I guess, in the sense that I don't have kids, right? I would love to have kids, but it just didn't pan out. But I only have me and the dog to worry about, and a boyfriend and blah blah blah. But I and I earn a good salary. I can't even imagine the fear that some people are feeling right now, where they don't necessarily feel that they have job security based on everything that's happening around us, the
Yeah.
emboldening of CEOs to now start to behave in a really autocratic way, which we thought had died in the
80s,
1980s.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're really starting to see some of that rise up now. The sexism and the misogyny that we're seeing rise up now, like it's mind blowing, particularly here in the US. And I really I'm scared for these people. I cannot imagine how that must feel.
Mm.
And I have an incredible amount of empathy. And I don't even know if good girl conditioning is enough to get you through that. I don't think
No,
it is.
no. It's like, I know it's like the cost of living. If you even break down those words, it's like,
Hmm.
this is not living for most
No.
people. It's existing. And the sheer cost of
Hmm.
existing is just,
Hmm.
it's just bonkers. And then obviously we had the disastrous budget, which completely screwed
Oh,
us over, didn't we? I'm not mentioning her
yeah.
name. Um, and she's still slapping her gums about the good that is happening in America. I'm like, literally, go and talk to some people. Like,
It blows my mind. I mean, I live in the South now. The first 5 years I lived in the US, I lived in California, but in Orange County for a lot of it. So Orange County is a lot Republican, very conservative. So that's really weird. That messes with your head because you're like, I'm in California. Everyone I thought would be fairly liberal, but then you've got these pockets, very
yeah, they
conservative.
like gang together.
Yeah, yeah. But now I live in the south. I live in Northwest Arkansas, which is in the kind of more built up areas. You have a lot of big companies here. So you have a lot of implants from the east and west coast. So it kind of
Mm,
balances it out. But you go outside of the periphery of the cities, it's very conservative. It's very rural,
mm,
and it blows my mind just how. I mean, it's like brainwashing.
mm-hmm.
People have become they're just brainwashed. It's like they have an amnesia of everything that happened. Like January 6th is a great example. Like we all saw it. We all
With
saw it
our
across the
eyes.
world. Yeah, like real time saw it.
Yeah.
And we saw people get pummeled, police officers get absolutely battered senseless for doing their job. And yet it's like nothing ever happened. And I'm like, wait, what? You know?
Mhm.
So with all of that going on, like with that weird, I don't even know how you describe that amnesia, but with all of that going on, which makes no sense whatsoever, how the hell are people meant to navigate the world today?
No.
God, that's depressing. But I genuinely don't know. And I think about me, if I was me now, growing up in that and being that carer, and I'm not sure I would have survived.
No. And that's, it's almost a, they're trying to make us feel like hopeless,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we literally can't succumb to it.
Mm-mm.
We
No.
need to keep talking and gathering and resisting. I read a really good, but literally the first thing I did when Trump got in again after crying for 24 hours, because I didn't think the world would be that shit, but turns out it is,
Mhm.
was buy the book on tyranny.
Oh, yes, it's Snyder. Great book. Hmm.
And it's like,
Hmm.
right, okay, just hold the line.
Hmm.
Don't
That's it.
and don't let people treat you badly.
That's it.
Don't roll
That's
over.
it.
Don't play nice. Don't play a good girl. Be a nasty woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Use your voice, use your powers for good.
Hmm.
And I think that, again, that's what keeps me going with my research. You
Hmm.
know, during the period of doing this PhD, I've seen the world of work swing and the balance of power swing from one way to the other, for being on the employer, back to the employee, now back to the employer. And right now, in the middle of interview, semi-structured interviews, data collection, and there's some remarkable stories out there, and particularly people that really recognise how delicate things are, and they could easily just bury their head in the sand and be like, well, as long as I'm okay, I'm just going to make sure I'm okay. But they're not. They're speaking out. Even just by
Yeah.
participating in my study, this is a way to speak out, and it's cathartic for people. They
Yep.
love to just be able to talk to someone who's completely removed. It's like therapy. I'm completely
Hmm.
removed. It's confidential. It's anonymized. Nobody's ever going to know who they are, what they've said to me, and they just blah it all out. And that for me shows that there's resistance. That for me shows that people wanting to use their voices, even in the smallest of ways,
Hmm.
shows me that there's power, and there's a need and a want, and people do want to make their voices heard in whatever way they can. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Hmm.
It's good. It is. It stops you wallowing in
Yes,
a black pool of despair. It's like,
yes.
the movie Inside Out, when the sadness is just like lying on the floor, touching all of
Oh,
the memories.
hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like,
Hmm.
no,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Yeah. When the election happened, um, like you, I mean, I was here, I was watching it. I had my champagne ready. I had my childless dog lady t-shirt on. Like
Hmm.
and I was with two of my best friends here, and we were like watching it. And then as the night progressed, I was like, what the fuck? Like, what? And by midnight, I was like, I have to go home.
Hmm.
I can't. And like you, I literally stayed in bed the whole next day. I'd taken the day off work, thankfully.
Mm.
But I figured I'd have a hangover. But no, I took the day off work and I stayed in bed all day, and I was in shock. It was shock, and it was I couldn't speak, and I couldn't have a conversation with anyone, and I couldn't even watch. I haven't watched it. I only started to watch the news again recently. Couldn't watch the news. And I love, like, we've got we've got a lot of terrible news channels here because they're all very partisan, but I'm a big Rachel Maddow fan. I love her.
Mhm.
And couldn't even watch her for months, months and months and months. And it's only been recently where I've started to dip my toe back in, because it's exactly that. I need to be aware. I can't bury my head in the sand. I have to know what's going on, so then I can use my voice and my force for good.
Mhm.
Um, and again, a way for me to do that is through my research and my thought leadership, and to try to talk about how the need for flexible working for caregivers, for the disabled. I'm disabled, right? I
Mhm.
have a connective tissue disorder, and I need accommodation for me to be able to thrive at work. Thankfully, I have that. My employer's amazing about that. Not everyone
Mhm.
does. So that's me speaking up. That's me using my voice. I might not be out with a placard, and I might not be trying to blow up Teslas, although it sounds quite fun. Um, But
I got a meme through. It's like how many Teslas are we going to throw in the Boston Harbor, like the Boston Tea Party? But yes, yeah,
I mean, there was a great, just as a sidebar, that there was a brilliant clip on the news yesterday which I saw, which just made me giggle. That our vice president Judy Vance had gone with his family on a skiing trip to Vermont.
yes, I saw the
Have you
placards.
seen this? They were amazing. They were amazing.
Mhm.
Go ski in Russia was one of the placards, which just had me like giggling. So exactly, go back to Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny. Hold the line. Use your voice. Don't waver. Don't look away. Don't bury your head. Um, and for us women, it's even more important.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
and
succumb.
especially in the UK where
Yeah.
we wouldn't have the repercussions for speaking out that might come for you lot.
Well, I lived in the Middle East,
Mhm.
and I lived I mean, I loved it, right? I mean, the HR stuff was rough, right? But
Yeah.
there was a lot of really cool things there too. I learned a lot about um Islam. It's a beautiful religion. I met incredible people. I got to connect with parts of myself that I didn't even know existed. But
Mhm.
it's also not democracy.
No, no,
So
no.
mm-mm,
It's it can be quite scary, different countries. And
mm-mm.
that's when, especially in the Middle East, it's like, don't, yeah, don't misbehave in any way, shape, or form because bad things can happen to you.
Oh, they can, and I've dealt with a lot of them.
Yeah. Okay. We could keep talking for about 3 weeks, I have no doubt. But we're supposed to keep these to sort of 30 minutes, and this is 30 minutes-ish, give or
Hmm.
take 30%. And so the last question that I ask all my guests is around what do you want people to think about after listening to us talking today?
Mm. So, psychological safety, the ability at work, the communal sense of being able to speak up, share ideas, fail without repercussions, to innovate, to give feedback, to critique. This was the seminal work of Amy Edmondson that was built on the shoulders of previous of Khan and uh, Venice and a bunch of other research. It's at risk.
Hmm.
It's at risk, and we can't let that become the next DEI. We look at what's happened with diversity, equity, inclusion in the last few months. I mean, even Germ over here dropping equity. Just
That's like the most important one.
I cannot, right? And yes, and now I'm hearing things about psychological safety. When I'm posting on LinkedIn, when I'm writing thought leadership stuff, when I'm talking about it as part of my research, I'm now starting to hear Twitters about, well, psychological safety, that's bullshit, and it's it's at risk, and we can't let it be. We cannot let it go the same way as DEI.
Mm.
We have to use our voices. We have to make sure that we're not just talking about it, that we're infusing it, that we are building it in to every part of our organisations, that we're thinking about it intentionally as we're building companies and we're building functions, we're building departments, because if that doesn't exist, if it's not there, we're just going to become cogs and wheels. We're just going to come in, clock out, and feel nothing. Innovation is going to stop, creativity is going to stop, drive is going to diminish. Like all of those things are going to go away. And the people that are saying that psychological safety is bullshit are the ones that don't care about people. So
No.
we have to protect it at all costs.
And it's so the business case for
Mm-hmm.
psychological safety has been proven. High
Oh, time
performing
and time
teams,
again.
time and
Mm-hmm.
time again. It's again the business case for diversity has been proven. The business case for equity has been proven. You know, more diverse, welcoming, equitable, psychological so safe environments, teams, businesses are more
Yeah.
profitable.
Yep. Yeah.
And
I know.
yet,
And it's madness. But it's not about knowledge and it's not about research, it's about control. Control
mhm,
and conform. Control and conform. That's all we hear now.
mm,
Um, we cannot control and we cannot conform.
no,
We cannot be
resist.
controlled. Yeah. Resist, resist,
Resist.
resist. Hmm. Be kind. Do good in the world. Be a role model. Be an example. Speak up. Do do the right thing, not because you're conditioned, but because it's the right thing.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
Oh, I want to keep talking to you, but we probably have to leave it there. So thank you so much, Marion,
Ah,
for
thank you.
coming on, and hopefully our listeners have learned some stuff today as well.
Yay.